Well, I want to get to one thing. Like, if there was one thing that you would want to tell someone about creating a community and one that kind of works for them as well as works for everyone else, is there anything that you would give them as, if you don't do anything else, do this?
Yeah, I mean, God, there's so many things. I would say one of the biggest things for me is there's a lot of people that say they want to build a community because they heard that was the thing you should do, right? There would be all these benefits from building community. But what they were really trying to do the whole time was build an audience. And I think there's a difference between building a community and building an audience. Now, if you build a community, you can also build an audience. If you just go out to build an audience, it's going to be hard to build a community, right? Because you're kind of putting people at different levels and things like that. So I would say make sure this is actually something you really want to do. Do you want to be involved in this? Do you want to put in all that hard work and the extra hours and all those kinds of things? Because for a very long time, if I wrote down all the financials of running a community, I was very underwater for a very, very long time. So it wasn't to make money for sure, certainly not in the beginning. So I think you have to really actually want to do that and genuinely care about, getting people together, even if it's not any benefit to yourself. If I can connect to people, I'm more than happy to do that for sure. And there's a lot of people in our group like that. But I think there's just such a big difference between building a community and building an audience. I'm biased. I'm partial to one of those over the other. And I have, I don't think I would ever say like my audience or my followers or my subscribers. It's like my friends in the group, And I think there is a big difference in that, not only in the way you think about it in yourself, but in the way you interact with people, So I think you have to do it for the right reasons in order for it to be successful. I think it would be really hard to build something long lasting that can sustain itself and kind of grow into that if your only intention was to build an audience.
Love that. And full disclosure, that was a trick question because I knew you would have more than one answer that you could provide. And it is my way of trying to trick you into coming back on for future episodes. So I wanted to force you to be able to give one, but know that this may open up future conversations for us to be able to have about it. But I also want to talk about the rewards of doing it the right way. And you gave me the perfect segue. This is what makes you a great guest. I want to talk about the rewards. How has your approach to building a community changed your business? Because you've kind of hit that nirvana of, because you went about it the way that you've gone about it, you don't necessarily have to chase client work or take on as many clients as you might have in the past. You've kind of built yourself a world and a brand that allows you to be able to function. And in some cases, depending on what people are doing, they may want to have more of a work-life balance, and getting to that point can actually open the door for you to be able to do things like that. Like we talked about, like the weather conditions and, when things happen, if you've got kids and the kids are home for the day, like, what do? I've been on calls where people wanted to be able to take care of business, and you could tell they're never home because the kid would not leave them alone. There was no boundaries whatsoever. It was one of those things of, this is open season. And what you've done is you created something that allowed you to be able to be on this call for us to have this conversation and still have time for family and everything else. So tell me about that. Like we see what the process was. It wasn't easy, but now that you're here, I'd love to be able to talk about some of the rewards and the wins that come from it.
Yeah. So I would say I struggled for a very long time with just working too many hours, because instead of having my agency, part-time and the community part-time, I just had 2 full-time jobs. So, there were a lot of 14-hour days, 6 days a week for years at a time, which I would not suggest to people, but I'm kind of a workaholic in that way. But at this point, like you said, because it's grown organically, I think, there was a point where I thought, ooh, maybe this is how I could actually sustain my lifestyle, my family, pay our bills and everything like that. And I was trying to just like, okay, how do I make more products and make money? And none of those things worked. It only worked when it was like organic and the right fit and all that. And I couldn't just do that on demand. It kind of had to happen when it would happen. So a big part of it was just time, like just waiting for there to be enough time. But you're right, at this point, I still manage a bunch of clients' websites, but I don't take on a whole lot of client work at this point just because I don't have to. So yeah, I work from home. I'm in a hoodie and gym shorts pretty much, unless I'm in the shower. That's what I'm wearing, which is great because I don't want to go anywhere and I don't want to put on any fancy clothes, which is excellent. My youngest daughter was born after I started this, so she's 6 now and in kindergarten, but I was able to be home with her, the whole time she was little. I wasn't able to do that with the 2 older kids, which has been a huge blessing because we just got to spend a whole bit more time together than we would have otherwise. But 2, because the community is worldwide. There's people, on it at any point in the day. I could really work at any point of the day too, right? So I've been able to kind of build my business around what makes sense for the kids' schedules. I honestly have no idea how people with a real job in an office, 9 to 5, have kids in schools because they're always closed or an event or whatever it may be. So the fact that I'm able to kind of build my schedule however I need to support the family is pretty awesome for sure. So it took a lot of work to get there, but it's definitely rewarding once you're kind of in that place, but never feel too confident in that, right? So I'm still trying to make it all work and sustain it, because I can't just sit back and enjoy that at this point, right? I need to still keep nurturing all that in order for it to last, years and years to come for sure. So the work does not stop at this point.
So we've talked about building a community. We've talked about where it can go, where you don't necessarily have to take on client work. Let's talk about the comparison of stability versus, when you're talking about taking on clients versus building a community that can kind of sustain itself. Did you notice any differences as far as sustainability? Just how did your workflow change or your day change based on pursuing clients? Because some people are really good at pursuing clients and they do really well with that. But if you're not a sales type person and you don't want to do the cold emails and things like that, in a way, you've almost described yourself as being somewhat introverted by like, I don't want to be out there with all of that, but at the same time, you're out there. So it may be something that personality wise, I think if you know who you are and how you like to communicate with people, it opens the door for you to be able to do things and extend your reach and still be able to generate the revenue that you had. So did you notice any changes in the stability from client work to having a community that you built and now can manage and maintain life with that?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things going from just client work to some of the monetization in the community is the entire model of service-based work versus product-based work is completely different, right? So when somebody comes to me and buys a website, they pay me money and then I have to go do a bunch of work. So it's really exciting because I get all this money in my bank account. Then it's like, oh crap, now I got to go do all this stuff for them. The product model is that in reverse, right? So you do a bunch of work up front to create something valuable. But then once you put it out there, every time, at least with digital products that I'm selling, every time somebody buys one, I don't have to do anything at that point. Like automation's taking care of delivering it to them and all that. Might have to do some support here or there, but I wake up in the morning and there's, new money in the bank account that wasn't there when I went to sleep, and I didn't have to do any new work for that. So that was a completely different thing. Now they both come with like their own set of challenges. I wouldn't say that one's necessarily easier than the other, but if you're trying to choose your own hours and all those kinds of things, the product side is definitely better for me on that. The other thing that's been huge for my sustainability in the business is sponsorships. So I think some people like sponsorship stuff and some people don't. I was never a big fan of all the affiliate marketing stuff. So I have tons of affiliate opportunities and can probably make a lot of money if I was willing to shill affiliate links all the time, but I just never felt great about it. My problem with that was as soon as I start sharing affiliate links, then anything I recommend from that point forward, somebody's just going to assume I'm doing it because I'm getting paid. And I wanted to be able to talk about the things I really like and talk about things I don't like. And there was no strings being pulled on any of that. So I went the sponsorship route, and because we built a community that's really engaged and all those kinds of things, attention is currency. That's it, at this point. So the companies that have businesses that rely on people that are in my community, they want their attention, right? So thankfully we built up some opportunities, our newsletter being a big one of them, to be able to sell sponsorship spots. Those are sold out right now a year in advance, which is amazing. So those kinds of things are nice for stability too, because, if I had to go sell, let's just make up a number, $20,000 worth of stuff to my community, that's a lot more work as far as individual touch points and sales and all those kinds of things, because I'm going to be selling them $10, $20, or $100 at a time. But when you go to a big company that has an advertising budget, that's one sale, right? So it makes a difference there. So for me, the sponsorship side of it has been pretty huge. Again, kind of like with letting people in the community, I tend to be pretty picky about who's going to sponsor because their name's going to be next to my name, and whether I'm endorsing it or not, and I'm not when they're sponsoring it, it's very clear. It says they're sponsoring this, but they're going to associate that company with my company. So try to be really careful about who I'm jumping in bed with on that as well. But the sponsorship thing has been really beneficial.
Once again, you covered the question before I even got to ask it. I love it. That was going to be one of the things that I was going to ask, because communities, you can create your again, some people are building it so that they can build their list, but one of the ways to be able to still stay authentic and still be able to generate some revenue can be sponsors. And you've got some great ones. There are some that, again, are staples. Termageddon, shout out Hans. That is one where I don't care who it is, similar to the website owner's manual. I think that's something that's a necessity when it comes to care plans. I don't even offer those publicly anymore. It's one of those things where you talk about where you get to a certain point, you know what's involved in the job, and I don't want to work on something if I don't think you've got the commitment to see it through, because the level of work I have to put into setting some stuff up for like care plans and things like that. I don't want to have to do that if your website's going to be down in, like 6 months or something like that. So I love Termageddon because that's one of the things I let people know right off. Like, you would want to make sure that you're covering yourself in all the different areas that you may sell, because people will put out a website and say, oh, I'm only selling in New York. Sometimes I've told people, like, okay, well, based on what you're selling and what you're charging, you need to start thinking about sales tax, because you're going to be selling in different states. And what happens if that state comes back and says, well, you took money from us, but you didn't kick in on anything. What are you doing at the end of the year? How are you planning for things like that? And it's not just knowing sales tax, it's also knowing the laws. And I think with small business owners, as much as they say it's supply and demand, it's really demand and supply. They'll tell you what they need. And then it's up for us to be able to come up with the solutions. You can create something and then try to sell it. But it's what you said. If you're trying to sell something, it's the level of work you have to do in order to be able to get it to all the right people and all the rest of that. If you're not shaking anybody down, you're not hitting people over the head with sales, you're creating an opportunity for people to be able to get answers to their questions, to learn. And in that process, you've been able to see to your family and yourself. So I think that's powerful. I think that's something that more people want to be able to do. They just don't think it's possible. And it's like, what is it? The 5-minute mile. No one thought it was possible until the first person did it. And then everybody started doing it after. I needed people to be able to see that there's a real example and give you your tacos at the same time.